from Teach for Hong Kong. We have Annabelle, Sabrina, and is Arnold here as well? Yes. Okay. So let's go ahead that we're gonna like share that what we do as Teach for Hong Kong. So first of all, Teach for Hong Kong, we are a organization. Can you guys all hear me, right? All good? Because I cannot see you guys. Yes. Teach for Hong Kong is a NGO that we try to place a young adult, young professional to school. And those school is not just any typical local school, but they are half of the student population receive any funding from the government or any subsidies. And then we pretty much school with a lot of underprivileged students. So today, we're going to share as an alumni who participate in this 1 year fellowship and try to share some insights like what we do um, and what we learn about the education system, especially serving the underprivileged students. So I think around the table, we can go ahead to start it. Let's start with Annabelle. Want to like kick us off to share about like your experience or your learning about when you in a placement in Teach for Hong Kong. Yes, and then we have Emily here as well. If you wave to us, yes.
Yeah, I can also start first because
Okay.
we go in the same order as the slides go.
Okay. Cool. Let's go, Emily. Thank you.
Yeah. Or shall we press present too so like everyone can see better? Like present the slides.
Oh,
If you,
one second.
yeah, thank you so much. All right, right. Yeah, let's see, it's loading. Hi everyone, this is Emily. To give you a bit of a background, so I'm currently still teaching, but I'm teaching in a different school, not the one that I taught in my fellowship. So I'm currently teaching in School of Creativity, where we take in senior form students who are generally more gifted in arts, and they are the ones transferred from other schools. And we are also starting our S1 intake this year. So for our senior form students, we offer them two streams of studies. So the first one is the art stream, where they can experience our comprehensive art diploma program. For students who would like to stick to the DSE, which is the local public exam, they can also take the DSE stream and attend some art classes in parallel with the public exam curriculum. So, but this is the school that I'm teaching in. And for this sharing, I would like to compare a bit of this school and the previous school that I served in. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so and to better compare, I would like to take the case of my previous student. So this is a case sharing from a traditional school context. So I would like to highlight the problem that in most traditional schools, oftentimes students' artistic development is undermined while the schools focus on their academic excellence instead. So on the right of the slides, you can see some artworks from my student, Sunny. So he's really passionate in photography, and the two photos were actually film photos developed from his roles. And he's also doing some digital art at the same time. And to know more a bit about Sunny, I'm going to show you something else. So next slide. So Sunny is actually a bit special, yes. So he's diagnosed with both ASD, which is essentially autism, and ADHD. So given this condition, he is often seen as the troublemaker in school because he can't sit still and he is often on his iPad, rather doing his own art and in his little world, or he is on his Kindle reading books that are out of the curriculum. But these books, I think the exposure to these books actually give him a wider perspective of the world. So unlike his peers, he's actually starting to read like Animal Farm and 1984. So these are, although in simplified Chinese version, not in English version, but yeah, I would say he is a really, he's really gifted in arts and very well read as well. However, because he's kind of constrained in the traditional school setting, he's failing all his exams, although being exceptionally talented in visual arts. Yeah, to also give you a bit of the background, because under DSE, the public exam stream, students can actually take electives besides the 4 core subjects, besides the Chinese, English, mathematics and stuff. So they can also take electives such as visual arts and computer science. But because in some schools, they won't allocate that much resources to subjects that are not, beneficial to the students' learning, so they actually take away visual arts. So knowing that he cannot attend visual arts lesson anymore, Sunny became really demotivated to go to school. And even, for one time, he actually went out of his home and threatened his mom that he's not coming back if he is to ever go to school again. So this can show how Sunny is depressed by the current school experience, when his visual arts talent isn't really uncovered. So this is a problem when academic is placed over artistic development, when some students will lose motivation to continue learning in school. So next slide. So that actually brought me to thinking, what if students like Sunny have another option? So I believe Sunny is not the one and only case here, because a lot of my students that I met in the current school, they actually experienced what Sunny did. So the solution I would like to suggest is essentially the innovative school setting that my current school is offering, because they open doors and help students visualize the career path for professional artistic development. And at the same time, to reassure the kids and the parents, we are also giving some academic support if they would like to continue on with their public exams. So I think this is one important reflection from my 2 years of experiencing teaching frontline in school. And I also have another problem sorted out, a problem and solution. So we can go to the next slide. Yes, so the 2 years of experience actually led me thinking if our schools are humanistic enough. Because for me, I was brought up in a very traditional school setting. So I went to a conventional school as well. And I've taught in a conventional school, but now teaching in what I would call an innovative school. So if I can, I would like categorize them into like 2 really vastly different approaches. So in most traditional schools, I would say they adopt the top-down approach, where the school administration, they set rules and policy, and the students follow, and the teachers are the one who make sure students follow. And that's why they would have the school discipline team, and they often follow a really rigid punishment system for misbehavior. So they give out major or minor demerits on the report cards, which is quite discouraging to students. And I come across students who really didn't mind these demerits at all, because they have a lot of them already. So the punishment system isn't really doing anything to them. Whereas in an innovative school, we usually take a bottom-up approach, where students were seen as equal as the teachers and the school administration. So students are actually encouraged to discuss and take part in the school policy decision making, because in this school we have a section called Student Voice every single month, where students can just suggest anything they dislike about the school or they would like to change about it. And they can bring this up in the section, and everyone discuss how it can be feasible to be executed in school. And if students, they misbehave, for example, if they smoke in school, yes, my students do smoke, but we encourage them to smoke outside of school. So, but if they smoke in school, we actually have a list of policies follow up their misbehavior as well. So, but instead of giving out major demerits or minor demerits, they will have to complete community service orders, just like how like the prisoners or the people who have committed crimes they have to do. For example, they have to help with like cleaning of the school campus, or they will have to help with recycling of the school campus. So instead of being labeled as bad, they actually have the chance to improve and to show that they are actually, passionate in studying in the school. They will probably not, do that again. So yeah, this is my part of sharing. So I guess we can pass the mic to Annabelle.
So Emily have shown us some examples on how traditional schools and innovative school work. And for my part, I will share more about what kind of collaborations within traditional schools can help. So for my personal background, before I joined Teach for Hong Kong, I'm actually worked in real estate developer for 2 years as a management trainee. But then I was very interested in building up personal relationships and work in schools. So I joined Teach for Hong Kong. So with my previous background, I always believe that it's not only about school when we talk about education, but it's all about how we collaborate and let our students know what's happening outside the world when they grow up, and then they learn about different aspects. So in my part, I will talk about some examples on how we can collaborate between schools and other units like business or universities to bridge that gap within our context. So I've worked in Caritas Family Change and Heart Secondary School, which is in a part near Shenzhen. So like 1/3 of the students are cross-border students, which means that because of COVID, they are actually studying via Zoom in Shenzhen with some of them, but part of the students are in Hong Kong. So the major problem is that they're not very proficient in English language, as well as that they're not very exposed to other careers, given that most of their parents are working like at third class or like truck drivers, or not those that we imagine Hong Kong usually will be like businessmen or university standards. So I'll talk about some examples how to bridge that gap for our students. So the first one will be a STEM project. This is a project under the Jockey Club Self-Directed Learning. So STEM, when we talk about STEM, we will usually think instantly about robots, engineering, high technology, right? So, but in our context, we try to build it in a more humanistic way. So the issue that we identified is digestive problems in elderly. So imagine you have an elderly at home. You usually find them eating food very difficultly because of their digestive problem. They may not swallow their food efficiently because of the loss of muscles. So we have asked our students to define some new solution for these kind of problems. So we start from a very scientific way of approaching problems. Like we set up hypotheses, observations, and then try to find out solutions to solve it. So we help them by giving this problem, and then also we have a cross-curriculum program. So science, life and society, English lessons would be incorporated to learn about what's happening in the elderly and what kind of soft food, which is the solution that we could help the elderly. So in this case, apart from building up the within school context, we also have supportive resources from the Hong Kong U, because we have a network of mentor schools where we can, not yet. Not yet. Yeah, we have a network of mentor schools that we exchange, like how we can do it within school curriculum. Okay, so the next one would be a English exchange program. So one of the problems that I identify is that most of our students do not have a privileged background like us, who are more exposed to English. Their parents are from mainland, or the parents don't know English. So who can help them to learn English within that context? So I've organized some English exchange programs. So as we know, we are using Teams, right? So I'm using Zoom to conduct those programs last year. So we've invited a team from Rockhampton Management Limited, which is a fund management team. So they have a group of very talented and culturally diverse staff from India, from Korea, from Japan, and they all gathered through Zoom to talk with our students. So imagine on Zoom, and our students are not really that equipped to use English. They are actually very shy and passive at first. So for the education itself, actually, we have to teach our students to be more confident. And through this competitive, repetitive trainings, they do have the confidence to use English now, but it's all about exposing them to different people and different experiences through these activities. Okay, and the third one would be a project of my own. So through last year, I've learned that actually a lot of things that we say in education does not only happen within school, but it happens outside school. And also we could continue learning about different perspectives and objectives. So therefore, with another Teach for Hong Kong alumni, so we have organized a podcast called We Think, We Listen Hong Kong podcast, which we aims to provide a platform that breaks boundary. So how do it relate to education? So because I've learned that within my context, when I talk to my students, we have a lot of generation differences, and we have a lot of different opinions about perspectives on either idols, social issues, or even how we approach life. So with that reflection in mind, I believe the first step that we need to learn about the world is learning about different perspectives from people of different background and cultures. Therefore, outside school, when I'm now studying psychology, and I really appreciate that we could actually exchange perspectives individually to bridge that gap. So the next slide would be some examples that I aim to do now. So what I'm aim to do now is to bridging communication between people with different perspectives. For example, for students studying from international school, they can communicate with those studying in traditional schools to learn about differences and how can we collaborate. And also I've talked about the new jobs that are available now, like slashers who do different sorts of freelancers jobs in the community, and also different ethnic minorities happening in Hong Kong. Like Jeff is an Indian who is the first social worker who is of an Indian background in Hong Kong. And we talk about all these things, and also through podcasts, everyone can listen about it and learn about perspectives that aims to help them know what's happening in the world in Hong Kong. And I hope that from that perspective, we can bring about like collaboration in different sorts of aspects. So that's my part, and I hope I can bridge to Calvin. Yep.
Yes, so I like the idea of collaboration. That's why we collaborate to share this sharing sessions. I'm Calvin Lee. I'm similar to Annabelle that I used to work before I joined as a teacher. So before I joined as a teacher, I was an engineer. I built sewage treatment plants. So every time you flush the toilet, where the wastewater go, I have to deal with it. So I deal with all the dirt. But then I decided to become an educator, join Teach for Hong Kong, and serve Carmel Ellison Lam Secondary School as a math teacher. So I want to be like, I don't want to just teach math, but teach the value of life, how as an engineer, how to like apply STEM to solve the real problem. Like for me is to to treat the wastewater to not like clean water that you can drink, but at least less pollution to the world. So I also was the senior grade for the life career coach, like career instructors. I try to give them like any heads up on like what to do after graduation, and I was a STEM teacher. So for me, what I see as a problem is even myself, I fall into that category. So when I was a kid, like at your age, I was a troublemaker. Like I think in high school, 5 high school doesn't like deny my application. Like they don't want me at all. So I used to have like very low self-esteem, but as I graduate and become a project engineer, I become very prideful. I become like, oh, I know this. And then when I look at my students, I felt like, okay, everything that you study is important, but to come to the real world is a different ball game. So I think the biggest problem for even myself and for how I see the education and how my students see the education is about achievement, it's about the learning outcome, it's about the grade. Because every time I come to my student, I told them like, hey, I have a STEM project. I have done some great thing. I was so prideful that I have done some great thing in this world, in this Hong Kong. Let's join together and conduct some STEM project together. And most of the students just felt very distant, like, hey, I know that Kelvin sir is a project engineer, he achieved stuff, but it's not relatable. Like he go from like a troublemaker students to become an engineer, but as an underprivileged students or like student with low self-esteem, they just felt like, hey, you can do it, I cannot do it. I don't get like good grades in my math, I don't do good grade in my science, so I'm not gonna try because I cannot do it. So I realizing that I think the biggest problem is not just like focusing on achievement and the learning outcome and all the grades. I think it's about the relationship. Later on, I find out that like the student doesn't really listen to me, or when I speak, when I teach, they don't really engage because we didn't build that relationship yet, that trust, that bonding, that collaboration, that community. So I shift my gear. Instead of like try to force them to learn math, force them to learn STEM education, I invite them to participate what I have done in the past. So I invite them to go to the supplier workshop and I show them how I solved the problem for the flooding problem in one of the area. I don't just like tell them like this is what you do it. But actually I learned how to play with those Arduino and BEST system alongside with them. So I think education, what I really emphasize is what I try to solve for education is using education to build a relationship instead of like I'm higher and you're lower. I'm gonna tell you what to do and then you try to follow up and then achieve more. That's my point. And then like after for the post fellowship, after I learned that like it's not about me as a project engineer tell them what to do. It's not about doing a lot of STEM project and then like get some recognitions. I think at the end of the day, what I learned from the fellowship is about community. It's about unity. It's about collaboration, what Annabelle said. So after the fellowship, I decided to build a school of future. I pretty much, it's initiated by my students. He said that like he need like a quiet space to study. So pretty much within a week, we went to space and then all my students decorated the space. I was a very messy person, so they helped me to organize everything, remove all the furniture, and then ultimately we also like organize some coffee workshop for my students to share about their ideas. The point of this slide and how to inspire you to do the STEM project, and I know that you guys have some deliverable, you need to achieve something. I was gonna say that like education is about relationship. So build something that can like unite people. Second of all, like look at the long terms. You make this hackathon, you make this project. This is one month or 2 months. I don't know the detail, but in the lifelong, how can you make a sustainable change? This is you can get like a quick win for this small project. In the long run, what can you do to achieve more impact? And this is why I try to inspire you to do as well. So this is the last slide that I'm going to share before I pass it on is, as I said, like once I learned that education and I believe education is about relationship. And I think that education can help us to pursue a sustainable future. That's why I quit my job as an environmental engineer and go to education. But as I go into the field, I realized that it's about unity. It's about like the education is about building relationships. So we have the empathy for each other and we try to do good for each other. So I want to inspire you to like build a product that can unite first. When you unite someone, like let's say you have a tool, you unite people, then you equip them. Like use another way to teach them how to learn math better, learn science better. That is the also like the core for education. And then the same platform, hopefully you guys can allow them to influence other. Just like now I'm building a school of future, I give them a space, and that space is for them to teach other students. And then this is the ripple effect that we can actually impact the whole Hong Kong and make Hong Kong a better place. Yes, so that's it for me for sharing. And I'm passing on to Sabrina. You're mute. You're mute.
Hi. Okay.
We can hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sabrina. So like basically a kind of a slide from me. So basically there are three things that like basically highlight for you all. I understand that this is a hackathon, and maybe you would think that okay, these guys they're all ups, they're taught at school. You're joining a hackathon, right, or might not have an idea or something. So what I want to highlight about which actually like align with Emily, Annabelle, and also Cal have told you. At first, we said education is about the people. You actually heard us saying how we really want to understand our students. We want to make it a more thing. It's because we actually go saying what their problems are. That is actually about the people rather than some like abstract kind of like data only find a good type of solution by looking at the data to actually understand trust and also relationship with them, and like that's the first thing. And the second thing is when you're trying to think about like okay what problem I solve. I think that now the other three of us have how we have problems that we see in. But because you're doing a hackathon, so I understand that you might not have that extensive kind of immersion in or some kind of text that's like very different from. So I hope that after listening to what we've told you, you will challenge some of your assumptions. Actually, go and reflect. Okay, is it really the case? Are my assumptions correct? Because if your assumptions are wrong, then you're basically solving the wrong problem, and it's a waste of resources and also your time and also your its effort to spend so much time to solve something that actually isn't really what the people need. And so that's why the third thing that I really want to highlight for you all is to be and also.
So I've submitted the mic may not work all the time. Sometimes it's cut off. Yes. And the volume is not high enough.
Is it okay now? Because I tested. Is it better if I use?
No, it was.
Is it worse?
Can you say more thing?
Does it work now? Or
The volume is lower, but it didn't cut off this time.
then maybe I'll do it with my.
This is better.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do it with my laptop's audio. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I taught in a school in Tuen Mun. It's called Sam Home Memorial Secondary School. And for those of you who probably have no idea where Tuen Mun is, you will see that it's the green top west side. That's where Tuen Mun is. And if Calvin could go on to the next. So the first assumption that I made during my fellowship here is that first, I thought that there's no way that I could wake up by 8 a.m. And go to school. Because you could guess it or not, I actually live in Kennedy Town. So that's the central and western part of Hong Kong Island. So, Calvin, could you? Thanks. it takes like an hour and a half or something to get from Cape Town to Turkey. Okay, so that's the first assumption. And the second assumption is that I kind of assume that whenever you know how to write, you would actually know how to spell. So this might sound a bit like crazy to you all. So imagine that you have a kid and the kid could write, okay, she greeted, blah, blah, blah. And you would think that, okay, this student can spell like the alphabets, right? But what I, like, so that's the other assumption, is that everyone in Form 2, basically because I was in charge of a Form 2 class of English, so I thought that, okay, everyone in Form 2 can actually spell the 26 alphabets. And the third assumption, um, so the third assumption that I made is something about ordering coffee in Starbucks. So I'm not sure, so you're all in international school, very fluent in English and everything. So actually kind of same, because I kind of like grew up in a very like confessional school kind of setting. Everyone is local, but we could all speak in fluent English. And then I studied in HKU, I studied law, so everyone obviously could order coffee in English. So the third assumption that I made is that, okay, all Hong Kong kids will know how to order coffee in English. Um, so yeah, these are the three assumptions that I had in mind when I was teaching in the school. But what I found out in my year is that first, actually not everyone in Form 2 can actually spell the alphabets. So that's already one type of like wrong problem that I was trying to solve. Because I realized that one of the kids in my class, she actually couldn't really spell the alphabets. So when I tried to like take her into dictation again, and I was like, okay, just spell Hong Kong, HONGKONG. And then I realized that, oh, she actually couldn't really write the alphabet G or something. And then I realized that, okay, she actually didn't know how to spell the alphabets. So it's no use trying to just make her spell the words and stuff, because that's actually not how it works. And the second thing that I realized is that they didn't know how to order coffee in English. And that's really kind of like a cultural shock to me. But that's also how I understand that it's not something that you could see just by looking from like abstract statistics or data or that kind of thing. Because there was that one time, I actually ran the same Rockhampton English workers exchange session just like Annabelle did. And I took my kids to Starbucks and I said, okay, let's order coffee in Starbucks as a treat. And then the students actually had to order coffee in Chinese in Starbucks. So they would say, I want to order latte, but they would say latte in the Chinese kind of way. So that's actually a really like shocking, but it's also something that I hope you all will try to remember, is that you have to see the problems with your own eyes, to think of basically like come up with your own kind of solutions or way of trying to solve the problem. So what I observed was that, first of all, your neighborhood and your community probably have influenced in ways that you weren't really aware of. Because in Tuen Mun there's like zero like foreigner there. They didn't really have to speak in English, so they don't even have that sense of, oh, I should order or I have to order in English. And the second thing that I realized is that being kind is not a question of reciprocity. So when you be kind and you try to build relationship and also build trust with the students and also with all the people that try to work with you, don't expect something in return. Just give, and someday you'll be able to take what you actually need. And the third thing that I observed is that I did manage to go to school punctually for the whole year from Kennedy Town to Tuen Mun. So next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So what I basically want to say is that, what problem are you trying to solve? Education is actually a very complex issue. It ties with the social, political, and also even economical kind of factors. I actually encounter problems that are larger than the school or the class of students or the group that you're trying to serve. So it might be about community issues, resources allocation, and for the solutions, it might actually be redesigning experiences or even trying to improve learning experience, that kind of issue. So when you're trying to do your hackathon, next slide, please. step, I hope that you would remember that education is really about the people. I hope that you would suspend your beliefs and also assumptions about the society and also your general. And finally, try to be curious and also open-minded. Yep. So I think that's all from the four of us. So is the CIS team going to have Q&A session, panelist session?
Yes, feel free to ask any questions. We would like to share our more experience about not just teaching, but also in STEM education. Yes. And I was joined earlier. I saw that you guys have a prize for first winner, second winner, and third, and then you guys can get a laptop. So if you guys can like help, if I can help you out, can you guys like share some prize with me as well? So please ask any question you want.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh.
Go ahead, Mir.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, yeah, that was really insightful for all the people who are going to be creating solutions. And I think that, like, given that you guys have so much expertise and understanding, like, with regards to these educational issues in Hong Kong that are probably applicable across the world, maybe you could help out the participants and let them know what you think the most important factor is to consider when they're creating that solution, that product that they're going to make.
I can go for that because I have some slide about STEM education and the main factor that can help you guys out. So I just want to go quickly on this. I don't want to spend too much time, but let's define like my approach is going to be STEM education because it's what I'm good at. It may from different approach from other people, but for me, STEM education is about I'm going to emphasize on engineering. Engineering is about solving problems. So solving problem is you apply the technology. The technology can be the sensor, can be those IoT to to get the reading. Let's say this case study is about Wan Chai flooding problems. So actually, the engineering solution is to design a storage system to prevent flooding. And then they use some technology to measure the water level. They use some science to calculate how many rainwater at the area, and they use math to solve it. So for me, I just give you guys 3 tips to promote any, especially for STEM education. First of all, it has to be data-driven approach to solve the problems. So you can see as a case study on the left-hand side, I actually built a wind tunnel system to measure the wind resistance. So try to develop some solution that enable the students to use data to solve problem. And then the second main point is, okay, what I understand for the current education and how I experience is always about competitions. It's always about like, there's only one first place, second place, and third place. But the second point, you try to develop some solution that is about collaboration. So the same example for this case study, it's not that I try to build the gadget that have the lowest wind resistance, but actually I collaborate with other students together. How can we make the best vehicle that have a low wind resistance? Then lastly, there's other example is about like the water filtration system. Again, like making the water filtration system is easy with the sand and different science behind it. But how can I make it into data? So I used to measure the turbidity, to measure the cleanness of the water, and I just keep going on the other case study. So I have a little more time with other people to share. Is I emphasize like education is data driven and collaboration. You can see me like doing that water filtration workshop with my students. They are very engaged. They try to like collaborate to design the best water filtration system. And then, but this is just STEM. This is just the science behind it. I think the real education happen if they have the chance to showcasing. If they can build something and then they're able to show it to others, just like each of us, we have done our fellowship for the whole year and then we have a time to share with others. And this is when the real learning happened for myself. And then when I look back, when I prepare all this slide, I realized that I learned so much from the past year and what I have done as well. So again, I really want to encourage you guys, like when you build something, think about if people use your tools, how can you empower them to use your tools to expand as well? So that's my sharing on the tips for STEM education, data driven, more on collaboration, and for them to showcasing. That's for me.
That was really interesting. Thank you. And then building off of that, obviously the product is super important, but in order to build the product, you have to first understand the target audience, which is something I think you mentioned. So are there any tips or suggestions that any of you have for the students, for the participants in the hackathon to sort of build a good relationship or better understand their target audience in the process of like designing their solution?
I can go first. To really understand the problem, I think you can start with yourself, because we can't really know all of the picture that happens elsewhere in different contexts. But I think if you start from yourself, if you figure out some observations that happening around you, start from that and understand who is going to be affected the most. So maybe I'll take my podcast as an example so as to better illustrate. First, what I observe is that there are huge differences in things that we see or things that we have opinions about certain issues. So by that, I figure out my target audience is youngsters like us, who is not that fixed mindset with things, or they are still curious about what's happening and what to take as a person in society. So my podcast is targeting those like 20s or those in universities or just fresh graduates who wants to know more about the world and know what can they do. So I think it starts from yourself. If you are really passionate about the issue, you may already have some ideas in mind what you can do. So start from that and see who else can also benefit from that solution. So from this podcast, I benefit myself by exposing to more different opinions, but at the same time, I can also benefit others by sharing my ideas to those who may have similar background or similar ideas as me, who wants to know more what's happening and know how to build innovative solutions. So I think that's my sharing. Yeah. See if anyone can add in.
I can also add on top to Annabelle's opinion. So I'm thinking that if we have to like solve a real issue, then we will have to identify a real need that our target audience are facing. So to identify the pain point, so I think it's really about talking to the audience and maybe just talking to a few of them and to build a persona for you to identify their needs from all kinds of perspective. So for my sharing, it was about Sunny, the student who failed all his exams, but he's really gifted in arts. So I think he's just one example of persona of students that are demotivated to go to school. So if, for example, the issue that you're solving is to build motivation, for example, intrinsic motivation for students to continue learning, you can understand the issue by talking to a real person, interviewing him or her on some of the issues that he's facing on a daily life basis. And then on top of that, you can try to devise some solutions but first of all, it's about talking to the audience and identifying the real need instead of just define something out of your assumptions.
Quickly, I think practical way where you can try without sounding creative or something is always ask like why when they try to tell and also share your experience. If I were Emily and I was trying to like ask Sunny, oh what like is there anything I can um like oh can you tell me about your experience or visual art? Then when Sunny may or may not say, oh I like damn I really hate boring. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do like normal whatever. Then don't say things that challenge your user. Don't just go ahead and be like okay, dude, you should pay attention at school. You should be a good kid or whatever. Don't say should. Withhold and also suspend this kind of like value judgment and also assumptions and ask like okay why like for example why does it make you happy when you get to paint or whatever. So try to like refrain yourself from doing things like that because I'm actually working as a consultant now and it's like really important for you to understand what your user and also your customer needs by trying to stay open-minded. So that's the advice that I will give to you all. And also like thanks to Calvin, he already shared some really practical and also um, useful applications for you all. So save the message and like just click on it and see what you can get from there.
I also want to add for my students, because my students are mostly local, and they have not a lot of chance to speak English and to learn English. So actually, English and are tools to help them to build vocabulary. And actually, I start something like I using a Zoom to read English book with my students, and the book is only 50 pages, so around a month. And then every time they read the English book, they read the book, and then I type out all the vocabulary that they don't know, and then I show them like, okay, next time we're gonna have dictation for this 10 vocabulary, and then we read the next chapter. So something simple can be like that, but for my audience, for my students, uh, like local school, they need more help in English. So that's I'm just speaking for a small group of people, but you guys can define your own target audience.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's something to like really keep in mind. And you know, thank you for that input. I think it'll be really valuable. Um, and then also something else that I think might be helpful for people to know is how would you guys determine success in their solution that they create? If it's aiming to facilitate the education of students, like is there any specific way or any specific goals that a solution can meet for you to say that the solution is successful?
If I think for me, if the target audience is a student, if we want to facilitate their learning or to help them realize their goals in life, for example, then that would really be the success will be building on their feedback. If they find it satisfactory, or if they can get the sense of satisfaction from using your tools or your services, yeah, I think it's really it's really on them to decide whether or not your idea is or your product is a successful one or not.
I think from the perspective of a past teacher, it's actually very hard to quantify the effects that we have. So we have doubts on this because success does not equally measures like the academic success. It's sometimes, like Emily said, is more about whether the target audience feels the difference. The difference could be in effect of building more relationships, being more trustworthy to their teachers or to their other parties to know more about the social issues. sometimes it's more qualitative instead of quantitatively defining that. So it's hard for us to say that whether we have impacted like 100 students, but actually sometimes impacting 10 students with more quality time, more impacts in terms of what they think about their mindset, about their insights of life, may be more appreciable for us. So it's hard to say when you have different stances. Yeah, maybe others can tell the issue. Yeah.
Yes, so for me, it was a tough questions because success is, we have like a rubric, how to success. We try to define someone that, because human beings have a wide spectrum, it's hard to fit into one category. But to answer your questions, I think success is, for me, I built this school of future. Like I have a very small space. And then actually I inspire my peers. She used to be an English teacher and she's gonna teach, like provide free tutoring to my students who also engage to learn today at 2 o'clock in what I'm here right now. So I think success for my definition is, it's not about the tools, like it can be the next iPhone, right? The next iPhone 12 that you can have a lot of like features. But if that tools cannot connect people and cannot inspire people, that tools is gonna fade away very soon. So for me, for the success is, you build something, you do something, and using that as a story to inspire the people around you. Like, why do you rent a space and then provide teaching for free? Because I know that that cost can inspire my peers, and my peers can teach my students. And I know that through education, I can unite Hong Kong and I can equip the talents and then lead Hong Kong to the better future. It's a long shot, but this is why I believe I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna like inspire more people to do it as well. So that's my success is, you can influence and replicate something that people can follow you to do it. Yep, that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Um, I think that really emphasizes the importance of design thinking for everyone and making sure that their solution, whether or not it's super cool, ultimately helps people because that's the goal. And one last question for you guys, I think, before we head into lunch. On a slightly unrelated note, after experiencing teaching students all over Hong Kong, are there any key takeaways or experiences that you had that you found really challenging or eye-opening or interesting that you'd like to share outside of these ones, which I think are like, you know, really interesting on their own? But if you have anything else you'd like to talk about.
Can you hear me? Is the audio working now? Okay. Like I said, I'm working as a consultant now, and one like really interesting, I don't know if it's takeaway or anything. I think the skills and also the like basically the soft skills and the empathy that I built up during Teach for Hong Kong Fellowship actually helps a lot. Now that I'm currently, first of all, always working on like in a group setting. I don't know if other teachers would share my views on this, but teaching is actually kind of lonely in some way because you always like teach alone by yourself in the classroom, and unless it's some kind of like mixed activities that you have to run with other teachers, you actually don't really need to collaborate all the time with your colleagues. But then as a consultant, it's always like a kind of group project, so you always have to do group project like on a daily basis, and also you get to meet like all kinds of different clients. And I would say that after dealing with kids, like clients are just grown ups, like they're kids in an adult body. Yeah. So I think that that's one thing that's kind of like interesting, also funny for me to kind of connect it that way. I think that the experience that I had when I tried to communicate with my students, try to understand why they're unhappy, why they're upset, why they're throwing tantrums. Oh, exactly. For example, I remember one really funny episode was that I was trying to get a girl to stand up and also like just basically greet me and like good morning, Miss Chang or something. And then she was like really upset and refused to stand up. It's actually because she broke up with her classmate. And she was like, I don't want to sit on this seat today. I have to move seats. So I actually think that this kind of experience, while it sounds like hilarious to you, actually helps when you deal with like actual and even more complex kind of communication issues because adults are way less direct than students are. It's actually good that you get to meet honest and also genuine people while in school. Yeah.
I have something to share. I think being a teacher or knowing more students helped me to think that, like Calvin has said, that it's not about hierarchy, it's more about sharing. It's like when I enter a class of we set disadvantaged group who are less like advantaged, but it doesn't mean they are less happy than us. It doesn't mean that they are less confident about themselves, because I'm actually working in a children's home now, and I figured that every time we imagine someone in a disadvantaged group, we will imagine them being very needy for help. But actually, it's not the case. Sometimes, as teachers or as solution helpers, we would like to provide solutions, but actually, we have to think from the perspective whether we could actually collaborate instead of being a person who provides help and they receive the help. It's more about like how we can work together to build something more. Yeah, I think that's the mindset I have in mind now. Instead of being a teacher, I'm here to provide. No, I'm a teacher here to build a platform for us to work together. So I think that the mindset that I have now is is better while stepping really in the front line. Yeah, that's all I have.
And for me, my key takeaway is that it's really a privilege to to study in a school that you like, or to be brought up in an environment that actually give you a sense of satisfaction. Because in a lot of cases, students in local schools, they just don't get a chance to really express themselves. So I have a last key sharing. I mean, of my of a friend of mine who actually studied in a traditional school and then went to the school that I'm teaching in. So before going in, for coming into my school, he was looking all pure and true, like how a lot of people would say, would describe. But then coming into the school, he got she actually dyed her hair and got a lot of tattoos all over her body. And his dad actually called in and asked, how come the school actually turns my daughter into a devil? So that was it was quite frustrated how a dad would see his daughter this way. But then how we're responding is that kids, if they are able to express themselves, this is how they are. We're not turning your daughter into any forms of you call it devil, but we still see her as someone passionate in arts. So I think if kids are allowed to express themselves, and if they're brought up in an environment where they actually they're doing what they love, this is their happy place. So yeah, I think this is my key takeaway, is that it's just not a privilege, but if we have the privilege, if we have experienced the privilege, I think we can empower other kids to do the same, to really go find the passion and not to just live up to the parents' expectations.
I have one last minute to share. For me is about I was engineer, logical thinking, solving problem, to educator, try to build relationship, and now I'm back to tech. This the company I work for now. So you go from like solving problem, relationship, which is take time, like trust and patience, and you go back to technology. Like technology is so impatient. Like it's all about innovation. It's about speed. For me, it's just you guys, the students, have a lot of privilege with a lot of like educator, a lot of people want the best for you, and when to prepare you to face the real world that everyone just like get more output, like do more work and achieve certain goal. So my biggest struggle is like I want to maintain the relationship, and I want to like achieve stuff together as well. And sometimes relationship is about emotional burden. Like my student actually texted me last night. He want to talk like midnight, and then I have other student like line up And then, so as you like educator, people know that you treasure relationship, then you need to like make some sacrifice. Like, oh, maybe next time you have to set some priority. Like, oh, maybe I have a sharing session this morning. I cannot talk like too late last night, and can we move another schedule? So I think it's about the difficult challenge, and as you move to the next season of life, is all about like maintain that relationship and also achieve things together. So that's my challenge and takeaway.
That's wonderful. Thank you all so much for this great presentation and for all your like points and ideas and stories. I'm sure they're so helpful for everyone and just interesting to hear in general. We really appreciate it so much. And with that, we'll be moving into lunch. So I believe that it ends. Lunch ends at 1:15. I might be teamed it wrong, but it's all on the schedule. And I think you can all leave the meeting room for now. We'll be back later in the afternoon for more workshops. And thank you everyone for coming. Thank you once again to Teach for Hong Kong for your incredible presentation. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.